Welcome to Florida Tech Talk and Review. My name is Cece McMillan, sitting in for the current agency. Our guest today is James Taylor, CEO of the Florida Technology Council. Jim, we're honored to be a part of the council. Before we jump into some of the questions I have around our new technology office and some of the bills on the legislative floor and where the council sees Florida's biggest opportunities for success, can you tell us a little bit about the FTC, yourself, and who you turn to for guidance?
Absolutely, and truly we're honored to have the current agency as a member of the Florida Technology Council. So FTC is comprised of industry leaders across the state with a focus on making Florida better, safer, faster, and more efficient. We don't sell anything, we don't buy anything. We're a 501c6 nonprofit association and a 501c3 nonprofit created to provide education. We are the only organization in Florida focused exclusively on the needs and priorities of the Sunshine State and our tech sector. We're not a lobbying organization, and no funds are applied to lobbying expenditure. Although the majority of our focus is on Florida, we do work closely with leadership at NASCIO, the National Association for State Chief Information Officers, GovTech, eRepublic, Center for Digital Government, as well as leadership within our own state agencies. We receive no funding for the work we do with the state, despite all the work that we do supporting our state agencies. Our funding comes exclusively from membership and from individuals and corporations who support the vision of providing clear and unbiased guidance. The other guidance that we receive is from the State Advisory Work Group, which is actually a group we created that is all former state CIOs and heads of agencies that can give a clear view on the needs of the state from the people who have sat in those seats. So we get a very good look at the state and what the needs are.
And you, of course, left off that you are part of a distinguished list of top 25 leaders in the nation who received the GovTech Doers, Dreamers, and Drivers Award for your vision and representing technology in state government. Congratulations.
Thank you. That award came with a tremendous amount of support, but thank you.
So much has changed over the past year. Can you give me an idea of where Florida is focused right now in the tech space?
Sure. One of the key areas that you're going to see Florida focused on is visibility across the enterprise. Many states hire consultants that come in, they construct a complete portfolio of all their assets, their hardware, software, everything they need in that space to give them a clear picture of where they are right now. Florida doesn't have that view. Now, that's not a ding against our state. It's not a ding against our past CIOs, certainly nothing against our new CIO, Jamie Grant. It's just that most state CIOs don't walk in with access to that view. We know that's what our state's trying to achieve right now, and they should be, because in some ways that's like having access to information like that is like sitting up above a maze and being able to look down. Once you can see the entire landscape without any interference, you can make some pretty rational decisions. Looking at that, you can say, look, it's pretty clear that we've got a lot of duplication over here. We've got a lot of duplication over there. So that is one of the areas that we need to start. But we have to remember that we don't need to build the entire empire all at one time, which is what Florida has repeatedly tried to do. And with current legislation, they're continuing to try and go down this path. We have to look back. We have to look at some of our hard lessons from the past and some of the lessons from other states, and then start with the low-hanging fruit, which in this case that we just described would be areas of duplication, areas of highest risk.
Is that where Florida is starting?
No, Florida never starts there. Florida wants to start with command and control and with data, which we currently see data as our most valuable asset. We think that if you have access to all the data, then you're going to be able to consolidate your state and you'll start saving millions of dollars.
To be fair, Brittany Kaiser said, data is the most valuable asset in the world. So with all due respect, do you know something that Florida's leaders and Brittany Kaiser don't know?
No, Brittany Kaiser would certainly know how valuable data is if you're going to sell it. But look, we're not disputing that data has value. It does. What we're saying is that you have to keep in mind that there are 2.5 quintillion bytes of data produced by people daily. So to give you some perspective, that's a 1 followed by 18 zeros. It's a million trillions. It's a billion billions. It's a million million millions. That's a lot of data. Data has value, true, but we're data rich. It's what you can pull from that data and knowing how to do it that really has the value. So think of it this way. You're out in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, surrounded by water. But if you don't know how to filter fresh water from salt water, you're kind of a goner. So that water has no value to you. Well, with data, it's knowing what questions to ask and what you're trying to accomplish. You need to know that first, and then pulling that information, there's your value. So creating a data management program, actually creating data architecture, yep, that's the holy grail. But it's not something you can accomplish as a first step. And we keep forgetting that.
Then where should we be focused for our first step?
That's the question. Great question. Your critical first steps start with technology architecture, business process redesign, which I'll give you, that's all built around data. But starting with data, that won't get you there. It won't get you where you need to go fast enough because it is a very, very, very long process in an area where you have to have quick wins if you're going to maintain support of your legislature. And we have to have that in Florida. If you want to make it work, rather than starting every 2, 3, or 4 years like we do in Florida, you've got to have support of your legislature, of your governor's office, and your agencies. Adding IV and V and NIST requirements to every project when it just isn't necessary for a majority of projects, it's going to drive prices up for the state. It's going to make more work for the vendors. It's going to create more cost for the agencies. We're not going to succeed by making changes like that. And that brings me back to what I spoke of before, which is the importance of starting in areas where you can have quick wins. Those are your low-hanging fruit. Florida's proven this over and over.
What specifically did Florida accomplish that's proven this is the way to go?
Florida hasn't proven how to succeed by doing this. We haven't succeeded the way other states have. And there's reasons why. Let's go all the way back to 2001. Florida created a new agency with a chief information officer whose job was to save taxpayers millions of dollars by negotiating contracts across agencies and ensuring that project rollouts were compatible from agency to agency. Sound familiar? We created the Florida State Technology Office in 2001, the Agency for Enterprise Technology in 2007, the Agency for State Technology in 2014, the Division of State Technologies in 2020, and now Florida Digital Services. Each one created to save taxpayers money by negotiating contracts across state government. And not one of them is standing today, with the exception of the organization that was just created to do the exact same job. So what's different this time? We're still trying to build the entire empire all in a week, and we're trying to do it through force. We just truly can't believe that new people combined with more demands is suddenly going to ensure success.
Are you saying Florida Digital Services is going to fail?
No. Well, actually, I'm going to let you answer that in just a second. The Florida Technology Council is saying, and we're saying loudly, that once again, we're trying to solve for the wrong problem. The question isn't, will this latest approach fail? What we really need to be asking is, why have we repeatedly failed in the past? And don't give me all the talking points as reasons why we wash, rinse, and repeat this process over and over again. After AST was defunded, I kind of tongue-in-cheek said, look, we might not need a CIO who's a legislator, and we may not even need one who has a tech background. What Florida probably needs is a CIO who has a history major so we can stop this endless cycle that keeps pushing us backwards. So, pushing backwards, agencies can blame our legislators for thinking that they know more than our chief information security officers when it comes to funding cybersecurity needs of our state. They can blame legislators for insisting on rolling out line item funding rather than trusting our tech leaders with a technology budget. Even Vermont is I shouldn't say even Vermont, sorry, Vermont. Vermont is creating a $53 million tech budget for their modernization projects. Great idea. Legislators, on the other hand, can point fingers right back and they can blame poor oversight, failed project, bloated budgets. But at the end of the day, that's not it on either side. It really comes down to something very simple. We overcomplicate the process. Today we have Florida Digital Services, and we have a very well-known and successful former legislator that's at the helm of the ship as our state CIO. And he's a great guy. I've known Jamie Grant for years. It's been an honor and a privilege to be able to work with him. He's sharp, and he is very well spoken. But a person could argue that a legislator and a state CIO are two very different jobs. Now, I'd actually push back a little bit, and I'd say, look, it's not a case of tech versus legislator. It's leadership. It's long-term support. It's being willing to learn from our leaders from other states and from our own state who've been through this. We do not need to invest millions of dollars into yet another office under another name. And Florida's not ready to give that office power over all state contracts dealing with technology, even if it's legislated. Even if they did, the office isn't equipped or staffed to manage that massive workload that they would create. So all we're really doing is we're implementing more steps, more hoops, more restrictions, more policy for our vendors and for the agencies, which, by the way, drives costs up for the agencies, rather than simplifying the process. And clearly, we can simplify the process. So HB1137 and SB1448, they're flying through right now. Funny thing is that with all the added restrictions and regulations, that bill doesn't actually address any of the real issues that we have in this state. Real issues, things like scope creep, shifting priorities, political influence. You remember a few years back when blockchain caught the eye of our legislature? Look, Florida might not need basements, but we need foundations. And instead, everybody's excited about building the penthouse. Let me walk you through the bill for just a minute. The bill states that Florida Digital Services, FDS, and the Florida Department of Management Services, DMS, and our state CIO, not the experts from each agency, not industry experts, they're going to come up with innovative solutions that securely modernize state government in our other agencies, including technology and information services. The bill also requires that FDS establish project management and oversight standards for our state agencies when they're implementing IT projects. Now, this is supposed to enhance security and interoperability, except that they also added that it also applies to cabinet agency IT projects, even if they don't impact any other agency. The average person can carry 40 pounds for about a mile. This bill requires FDS to carry about 40 tons and to become experts in the needs of all agencies, to provide oversight, guidance, development specifications, modifications, and then give approval over any planned procurement of an IT project. In other words, we found a way to slow down a process that is already too slow. And that's this bill. This bill is an anchor that is going to create unbelievably just a huge amount of backlog in projects at a time where we need to be moving forward in this state. The only thing we hadn't done was drive up costs for the state. But then that was taken care of as well last week when we added in IT commodities and services purchased by the state now need to meet National Institute of Standards and Technology Cybersecurity Framework, NIST. Sounds great. It really sounds like we're protecting our state, and I know that that's the intent. But the reality is, it's an unnecessary blanket approach for a majority of our state projects, and it's only going to slow things down further, and it's only going to drive up costs for the vendor, and as a result, for the state. So, while Florida's coming up with more work and more restrictions, John Quinn, the CIO for Vermont, they're working with their legislature to create a $53 million tech fund to help modernize their projects.
I don't see Florida implementing a tech fund this year. So can you give us an example of what you mean when you talk about opportunities to grab some quick wins and save the state money by focusing on low-hanging fruit?
No, I don't either. Yes. Did you know that it's estimated that if Florida agencies could share data horizontally, they could save roughly $4 billion a year? Because we'd be able to turn our data scientists loose on insurance fraud, Medicare fraud, Medicaid fraud, and unemployment fraud. That's not even revenue connection. Fraud is where the money is. But Florida got rid of our chief data officer, so we need to go a different direction. Let's start with enterprise wireless phone contracts. In today's world, do you think our wireless phone needs are radically different from agency to agency? No, they're not. Each individual agency should not be negotiating for their own wireless phone services. There should be one project management office, FDS, to handle the contract, negotiate the deal, leverage the buy. But we have to also be very clear here. We're not saying one agency to step in and tell all the other agencies how much money they get to spend or what to spend on their contract or what procedures that they need to follow. That's command and control, which is what we tend to do. Agencies, they don't need to follow any additional procedures, processes, security requirements to secure a contract like that, because really only one agency does, FDS. While they're handling the contract, negotiating the deal, leveraging the buy, they can follow those procedures, those practices. And in every case, we need to make sure that there's an opportunity for an exception. If an agency can show where they have a separate need that comes with a benefit and a savings to the state, if they act independently, then they should be able to do that, just like they do in almost every other state.
It appears that right now Florida is focused on data architecture. Are you suggesting that consolidating phone services should come ahead of creating a data catalog?
In our experience working with state leaders across the country, working with NASCIO, the National Association of Chief Information Officers, working with leadership from GovTech Magazine, eRepublic, the Center for Digital Government, the discussion around data architecture usually occurs after you've had success across other domains. Then you're in a position to prioritize. What about cybersecurity? What about risk management? Those have to be up there. They might be tied for number one. Where are we with cloud migration, with cloud contracts, with cloud services, with cloud maturity? Where are you with digital services? If you look at the priorities across states, it's cybersecurity, it's digital services, it's digital government, it's cloud services, and you need to go down that list. And data is on that list. It's a part of all of those. But clearly, I think any rational organization out there realizes how difficult that is. So if you don't have a clear strategic plan in place, give you a good example. Georgia has a 2025 strategic plan that they put out, and it's tight. It says, here are the 5 things we're going to address. 5. They're not building the entire architecture in one time. 5.
So why 5?
I was hoping you would ask that. That's not just a random number that we made up. You pick 5 because that is really all any state can realistically expect to accomplish. So Georgia has their 5, and it's around digital services, it's around security, it's around broadband, it's around identity and access management. They have 5 strategic initiatives, not just because these are important, incredibly important, but because they know that they can have success with these 5. And when you put our CIO in a position where he's supposed to consolidate our state, taking on 10, 20, 50 different issues, projects, and all the work that goes into those, I'm sorry, it is just not possible. And we are going to come back to our legislature next year, just like we have in the past, and like we will the next year and the next year, having failed. We did it in 01, 07, 014. It's going to happen again because they're going to see where you failed in 10, 20, 50 completely unrealistic goals that were not even plausible, but were expected, instead of focusing on 5, accomplishing those, and then getting the next 5, and then the next. Georgia has been incredibly successful, especially in their digital government platform, their digital service teams, and their work around online services, because they took it step by step.
So you just named several areas that weren't part of the low-hanging fruit you first mentioned. Should we be replicating Georgia?
Sure. Why wouldn't we take an approach that's been proven successful over and over again by other states? At least when it comes to selecting and focusing on 4 or 5 areas where we know we can have quick wins the way Georgia did. But Georgia's fully outsourced, and Florida Tech Council does not see Florida going that route. So if we had a recommendation, it would be to take a look at the big spend states. Look at New York, for example. They are beyond consolidation. They're more of a unified model, kind of like Oklahoma. All 3,400 IT folks in New York all report to ITS, which is their Office of Information Technology Services. They have chief business officers or CIOs for clusters and domains, similar to Florida. Their CISO is a direct report. Their CDO is a direct report. So they're able to move things along, and they're able to initiate and do things that Florida can't because they have that leverage. But they also move to a unified data center. So when people say that Florida's too big to do some of these things, it gets a bit frustrating. You know, if there's a message that we would have for our leadership in Florida that we would truly like them to hear loud and clear, it's don't get in the way of the people who have the knowledge, the ability, and the desire to fix things by telling them what they can't do. And that happens every year in our state.
Can you walk us through one of those areas you're seeing in other states where Florida can have a quick win?
Okay, let's start with an easy one, digital signatures. Florida Statute 668.5 states that an e-signature has the same legal recognition as a manual signature. So let's look at an agency like Department of Children and Families. And from Children and Families, let's take one file from one case of a caseload, from one caseworker. That's going to have approximately 734 pages to that one file. Of those 734 pages, 91 of those pages need to be signed by a case manager and a case supervisor. So 91 pages times 2 signatures equals 182 signatures for that one file. And when you have an average caseload of 16.42 actually, that equates to 2,988 signatures per case manager and supervisors. Now multiply that times 5 minutes to get a signature, which if you can get a signature in 5 minutes, more power to you, that's incredible. You're going to have 14,940 minutes to get that signature. Divide that by 60 minutes and you have a total of 249 hours for obtaining signatures per file, per caseload, per caseworker. Now multiply that out times the 2,795 case managers, and you end up with 695,955 hours expended annually to obtain 2 signatures. Now you want to talk about saving the state money, or in this case actually saving lives of children. What roadblock is out there that's prevented DCF from moving forward when the head of agency said it's a done deal back in November of 2019? And if that's going to save just one agency millions of hours and dollars, then why isn't that consolidated across all our agencies? We don't sign things differently. That's one easy example.
So if our agencies have the support they need, what should the next step be?
Florida wants to be a unified model today. So let's look at everything that New York's done over the last several years. You're going to see that they successfully accomplished those things through a gradual march to that unified model. Ohio had the exact same gradual march, except they call it IT optimization rather than consolidation. So 2 great examples. They got where we want to be, but they did gradual march. One of the first things that they looked at was software asset, which is an area that is out there that's it's difficult for CIOs to get their hands around to really see what is costing our agencies money. So states like Minnesota that are centralized, they start with portfolio management. They say, well, we need to know everything that's out there. We need to know what's at risk. We need to know what it's like. We need to know what version it's in. And when you discover that you have identical products out there across the agencies, which we know for a fact is the case in Florida, you're also going to discover that you've got multiple versions of that same platform running. That's costing you so much money unnecessarily. It should be unified. Everyone should be on that same platform.
Okay, then what are the areas we need to look at that Florida is missing?
FTC fully agrees that Florida needs a governance model that delivers consolidation, but it needs to come as a properly funded, collaborative approach. We have historically chosen command and control over collaboration in this state. Command and control does not work. It's never worked in Texas. It's never worked in Florida. And we've proven this how many times now? We have to stop telling our agencies that they need to do more for less. And instead, we need to start working with them to find those ways that we can lessen their workload while we reduce their budgets. And there are absolutely areas where we can consolidate to do that and still drive efficiencies.
And what about the pushback?
There isn't an agency out there that is going to scream about being part of a wireless enterprise phone contract. Not if it truly provides them with the same level of service at a lower cost, and not if someone else is going to do the work to negotiate that contract that we talked about. And if it's done correctly, that should be the case. Now, if we have an agency that wants to then bundle that into something else that this agency doesn't have any use for, well, then that's honestly not saving money. And yes, you're going to get a pushback. The same's true for call center infrastructure, hardware, software, identity management, access management, mail campaign services, and the digital signature services that we talked about. Each one of these, all of these have the ability to be negotiated as a consolidated service at a cost savings to our agencies and our state and our taxpayers, by the way, without sacrificing service. What we're talking about is capitalizing on opportunities to create a harmonized environment. So Florida has not had that. We need that type of environment where you're working together with your agencies, with your vendor community, and then with each success, you're working together to find that next opportunity and the next opportunity. And I know that the way I'm saying it makes it sound easy, but we know it's not. It's not easy, it's not fast, but it's successful when states take it step by step, rather than trying to build the entire enterprise, the entire house, all at one time. So let's have success be the goal, rather than trying to have the goal be, let's turn Florida into a consolidated state this year, or next year, or the year after. We have to take it step by step.
Okay, but what about Texas?
What about Texas? We like to compare ourselves to Texas. We've been doing it for 10 years. If only Florida were more like Texas. That's my Texas accent. Sorry, Todd Kimbrell. Look, Texas isn't a consolidated state. They have 110 agencies, and they have never been able to get legislative support to do anything more than serve as a broker. But while Todd Kimbrell was there as their CIO, they were able to accomplish a lot of good things within the confines of what they could do. That's where Florida needs to focus. That's where Florida needs to start. FTC has been saying this for what seems like forever. We don't fix the challenges we have in Florida by arming a new agency with a bigger hammer, by throwing in more regulation, more penalties, a more difficult process for vendors and agencies in an attempt to try and force them into consolidating. We have tried that over and over again. We're asking Florida leadership to step back, take a position that will allow our state CIO, our agencies, and our vendor community to work together and identify 5 consolidated areas where we can have wins over the next 2 years. And then let them go out and do it. And then do it again in 2 more years. And then again and again and again, because it is not a fast process. It needs commitment, support, collaboration, and the desire to focus on areas of need that can deliver those quick wins that Florida needs. And I mentioned Doug Robinson, the executive director of NASCIO, is one of those guys that FTC leans on heavily when it comes to understanding why and how some states succeed and others fail in those same areas, same challenges that Florida faces. When it comes to Florida's repeated attempts to build this empire, Doug sums it up in one sentence. He says, "It's really tough to eat an elephant in a weekend." And I get it. You know the old saying, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. Florida needs to go one bite at a time. Let's work together. Let's bring together the council. Let's bring together our agency leaders. Love to bring legislators into that, and our CIO, to find what are those first 5 that we can start with and start having those wins for Florida, and then do it again and again and again until we become a consolidated state. And we can do it. We have that ability if we take the right approach.
Thank you, Jim. And a special thank you to all of our fellow members of the Florida Technology Council for your role in providing an unbiased industry voice that supports our state agencies. That's all for this session of Florida Tech Talk and Review. I'm CC McMillan. I look forward to seeing you next time.